Lumpur was talking last night about the Dhamma being the language of feeling. And so we can talk a lot about things like helping each other out, but then the Dhamma expresses itself only when we actually help each other out. So just like the simple thing, like getting Anagarika into town so he doesn't have to pay $60 for a 15-mile ride into Ukiah. And or we could say, well, you're in Anagarika, even though you work your butt off, you got to pay for it. Shut up. You're here for training. So, but then when the Dhamma starts to express itself, it's actually helping each other out and not listening to those quote-unquote ideals that might be in the mind. They can actually be quite harmful. And Lumpur Sumedho is always talking about that too. Ideals. The difference between the ideals and how we actually live, how we actually practice. So it's good to have ideals. The ideal monk, the ideal bhikkhu. But then holding that in a way that we don't tie ourselves up in knots and make things complicated or just feel a sense of not being good enough all the time. And then what would happen if we actually reached our ideal? Usually the ideal in our mind is so ridiculously high and perfect. If we actually became like that, we'd probably just be really, really weird if we actually matched our ideal. So try to think about it as a thought experiment. What's our total perfect ideal of who we want to be? And just imagine if we just suddenly became that. The ideal is kind of a trick too. The ideal in the mind, it's a trick of ignorance. It's a trick of delusion. Because the whole point is of the ideal is you don't reach it, but you're working towards something, so it keeps that becoming generating. It's generating the becoming. The ideal isn't actually meant to be reached. It's meant to keep that becoming going. So it can be seen as a trick of ignorance as well. That's why Lumpur Sumedho is teaching, well, you're perfect already. It doesn't mean don't develop yourself. It doesn't mean don't learn the Patimokkha, learn your Paritta chanting, do all the things we develop ourselves in, develop the meditation. But it's trying to go against that, holding an ideal that comes from ignorance in the mind. So trying to actually work against that and then come back into the present and develop some contentment and start to develop that enjoyment in our practice and in our spiritual development. And then see where it goes. Because we don't actually know where it's going to go when we do a lot of wholesome actions and do a lot of generosity and do a lot of acts of kindness. Then we don't really know what the result is going to be. We have faith that the result is going to be good, but we just keep moving forward with an open mind and take it as kind of like an adventure. Each day is a new adventure. And then it becomes quite enjoyable and things start to open up for us. And then the faith really gets strong at that point. Leave that for reflection this morning.